So some of you might be wondering why I haven't been wearing glasses over the last few videos. It's because I've just decided to take them off, but because the thumbnail has it, one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the finale of The Last of Us Season 2. It's been a really great time talking about all of the episodes over the last several weeks, but now we have reached the conclusion. And there are going to be spoilers in this video. You have been warned for the season finale, but we're going to do things a little differently this time. I'm going to first talk about the episode, and then the second part of the video, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the entire season. So let's start off with the finale. In the previous episode was a flashback, so we went back and we saw the story play out between Ellie and Joel, but before that, in the present timeline that we're in, we are at the tail end of the second day in Seattle after Ellie has confronted Nora, and she has just shown up at the theater once again, and she got some information from Nora, but things seem to be a little quieter when it comes to Ellie. There is some kind of shell shock that's within her. And it is very clear that what she did to Nora has affected her in some ways. Because much like the game, her realization sort of hits her like a flood. The idea that she made her talk. Even very much verbalizing that I made her talk. So she goes into the dressing room in the theater and she's talking to Dina, who is resting up after the arrow has been removed from her leg. And the conversation that they have is actually something that does happen later in the third day when Ellie and Jesse are out. So she tells Jesse the story of what Nora told her, leaving out the parts about Ellie being immune and everything with the doctors at Salt Lake City. But Dina already knows about Ellie's immunity, and so Ellie tells her about what Nora's told her, and she confides in her the rest of that story. So that dialogue that happens while you're moving is conveyed over here, and it's made very clear that this entire mission, in a lot of ways, to get the people who've killed Joel, there is a reason as to why all of this happened. And this goes back to something that happened earlier in the season when Dina's telling the story about her family being killed by the raider. Essentially boiling it down to the fact that it doesn't matter what my family may have done to this raider or whatever happened. I would have hunted him to the ends of the earth pretty much if I had let him go that day, if I hadn't killed him. And the fact that she didn't really know what had happened, but in that moment she just saw her family dead and, killed the raider as revenge, that was enough. But since now Dina knows the context behind why, and with her being injured and with Ellie also having these back scratches like crazy across her and, having taken a couple of hits, even she is deciding that it's time to call it. So she says that they have to head back. And that's something that's made very clear because Jesse as well is like, look, I've figured out that she's pregnant and you've come on this mission. It's incredibly crazy, but look at everything that's happening in the city. We can't die over here. So we have to head back. So we're going to go get Tommy at the rendezvous point, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to go back to Jackson. But Tommy's not at the rendezvous point, which is the library, and it's a moment which is similar to the game in which you cut through it, and there's a children's section with some storybooks there, and eventually Ellie grabs one and is flipping through it, and something that comes up is the fact that at the end of the day, everything that Jesse is doing is to protect the community of Jackson and to help everyone over there, and that everything that's happening here is taking away from that. But they get a call on the radio that was taken from one of the WLF that there seems to be some firing going on and that there's a sniper, and that might be Tommy. So they're about to head out, and one direction heads to Tommy, and then Ellie looks in the other direction. And earlier in the episode, when Ellie is asked if Nora told her anything, she says she only said two words, whale and wheel. And when she looks at the other side of things, past the shooting area, she sees a Ferris wheel and she sees a building with a whale on it. And she puts together that this aquarium might be where Abby is. And this is when Dark Ellie comes back up because Tommy is in the distance. And right now Jesse is saying we gotta go get him, and we have to get back to the community. And Ellie just goes, fuck your community. Like, my community was taken from me. I'm gonna go after them. And very similar to the game, she decides to continue in pursuit while Jesse decides to split up, and he basically just says, I hope you make it back. If you've played the games, actually, this is very similar to what's happening, especially while they're going around, the WLF seems to be mobilizing for something. Not entirely sure what it is, but they're prepping for something, and you cut to Isaac for a second, who seems to also be, getting ready and in the headspace of a big something that's about to go down, and the fact that they have to get going soon and that this might be the last night that they're alive. And eventually when Ellie makes it down towards the docks, she finds a boat that she sees it swarming with WLF and waits for them to leave. And they're heading out towards an island as a storm is approaching. Now, we'll talk more about that in Season 3, I'm guessing, because, again, if you've played the game, you know what's about to happen. But I'm going to save those details for later. But essentially, they're heading towards an island, and Ellie grabs the other boat and starts to make her way towards the aquarium. But her boat gets capsized when she's trying to make her way there because of a huge wave, and she ends up on the shore. But it's not the place where the aquarium is. Now, this is a new addition. In the game, she makes it to the aquarium because the boat does get, flipped over, and she does, get off of it, but then she swims over to the aquarium against the current. In this case, she gets swept across to the other island, which is where the WLF were headed. And she gets spotted by a few Seraphites, and she's being taken to essentially be hung and killed. And you essentially put together that this is the Seraphite Island. But Ellie never goes to the Seraphite Island. That's not something that happens in the games. It's only, towards the later part of it that you get to any kind of experience over there. So to have her be at Seraphite Island is very interesting, but you get like a brief moment as attack sounds are heard towards the villages, and they just leave her and they make a run for it. And she grabs another boat and she goes over to the aquarium. From here on out, it plays out a lot like the game. She corners Owen and Mel. No dog killed this time, so I guess they didn't put that part in there, which I think is fine because most people were not happy about killing the dog in the game. So I guess they just decided to remove that for this particular section. But as she makes her way through the aquarium, she also ends up in like a hospital area where she sees a lot of bloody bandages. Again, things that'll make more sense when you get to more stuff when it comes to the game story. And eventually she corners Owen and Mel, and she asks them to tell her where Abby is, and that there's a map lying on the counter, so to point at the map to where Abby can be, and that whatever Owen points to, Mel has to point to the same thing, and those locations have to match. But because it seems like Owen's about to make a move, Ellie shoots and kills him. But the bullet goes through Owen, and it also goes through Mel's neck on the side, and so she's also starting to die. And as she collapses, and she tells Ellie to hurry up, and she goes over, and Ellie finds out that Mel is pregnant, and that she can get the baby out as quickly as possible before she dies. Slightly different from the version of the game where you actually get into a fight with Mel, and then she tries to stab you, and then you turn the knife against her and you kill her. But the realization of her being pregnant is the same, in that she's dying and you've just figured out that she's also pregnant, mirroring the fact that Dina is also pregnant, and the pain of that sweeping over Ellie. And as Mel is dying with this idea that she believes that her baby has been safely removed, she passes, and Ellie breaks down. That's when Tommy and Jesse come in, and they grab her, and they leave, and they go back to the theater. And we come to the closing minutes of the season over here, as they've decided to leave. They're talking about a route back, and eventually they're putting their supplies together, and there's some commotion that is heard outside the theater door. And as Jesse is talking to Ellie about coming after her and protecting her, and being there for her, because Ellie would move mountains to do the same for Jesse, which is true, they hear that noise and they run towards the door. And as the door opens, Jesse is shot dead, and Ellie manages to just about crouch before a shot hits her. And a woman is saying, stand up, toss your weapon, and stand up. And it's Abby, and she's got Tommy at gunpoint, and she realizes that some things happen over here. Like this is the girl who they spared at Jackson. And Ellie basically says, look, I know why you killed Joel. I mean, I'm the girl, I'm the cure, you want me. and she's pointing the gun then at Tommy, about to shoot him, and then she says, "We let you live, and you wasted it." And she points the gun at Ellie, and it cuts to black. And then we get to a part where I'm so curious how TV viewers are responding to this, because it cuts to black for a few seconds, and then it cuts back to Abby asleep on a couch with a book. And Manny, Danny Ramirez, walks in saying, "Hey, Isaac wants to see us." And so Abby gets up, she heads outside, and she goes and looks at this big view of a football stadium, which is this massive base for the WLF. And as she's looking at it, she turns back, heads inside, and the text appears saying Seattle Day 1. So here's what's about to happen. In the game, you get here, and then you get Abby's side of the 3 days in Seattle. You've seen Ellie's story, you've seen how that's played out, and now you look at it from Abby's perspective. So season 3 is going to be Abby's story. Now, how much of that is going to, cover the rest of the game, I don't know, but essentially speaking, that's what you're about to see now. And I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out, because Abby's section of part 2 has some of the more intense moments in a lot of ways, especially the stuff to do with the 3rd day. So I don't really want to give too much away about that, but when you get there, there's some stuff that goes down. So all in all, a very game-centric episode as far as, the season goes. Very similar to first season's finale, which was very much, towards the end, it was very much like the game. And it very much, brought that in here. But very similar to that finale, I do have one issue with this finale. It all happens very quickly. That entire sequence of events that I just described to you, from Ellie ending up on the wrong island, to Owen and Mel getting killed, to that cliffhanger ending, just about 20 minutes, maybe even a little lesser than that. It's all very, very quick. And I was a little surprised by how fast everything was happening. I think very similar to the first season's finale, I would have liked a little more time when it came to, having those sequence of events play out, because it's about, it takes a while to set up to that point, and then it all happens very quickly. But on the flip side, when you look at the game, Seattle Day 3 for Ellie is pretty short overall. Yes, there's gameplay involved with you trying to get a boat and then eventually cutting through places as you're getting to, to the aquarium. And you also face a shambler on the way. No shambler yet, because we just got introduced to spores not 2 episodes ago, so it's a little too soon to probably do that. But that's what happens in this episode too. Ellie and Jesse are going by. They're trying to evade whatever is coming with the WLF and the Seraphites. Ellie has to get a boat. Ellie heads to the aquarium. And then the rest happens. So in a lot of ways, it is very similar to that. It just happens very quickly. But, it is a shorter day, even comparatively to how the video game plays out. So all in all, a decent episode. And overall, when it comes to season 2, I think it's mostly solid. I actually really liked most of it. Much like season 1, I do feel that the pacing takes some hits over here. Sometimes it's a bit too fast, sometimes it's a little too slow, and when that happens, it sometimes can lose momentum in a few episodes, especially in the middle section of the season. It does feel like things get a little meandering when it comes to how it wants certain things to play, and it also affects some of the tonal moments as a result. That's again something that I had a problem with in season 1, and I feel like that's carried forwarded over here. I think there's one thing that they absolutely need to fix going forward, and that is that. And I hope that when it comes to the 3rd season, and a potential 4th, I don't know if they're going to go with that, but if it happens, I hope that they tighten that aspect up a little more, because right now that's something that is bothering me. Something that also came up in season 2 was the story structure. This was always going to be a tough one to pull off, because part 2, the game, has a very scattered timeline when it comes to how it presents things. And some things have been reshuffled quite a bit over here to accommodate for the TV medium. Some stuff makes sense. Some stuff I think took away some of the edge of the storytelling. But I also understand why some things had to happen right now as compared to later. For example, why Abby is doing what she's doing. You don't find that out until you get to her section of the story. So if they followed the game exactly, you wouldn't find out about what happened with her father until the opening of season 3. But because it's a TV show, and because TV audiences need to have more backing to certain things, you got that right now, because not everyone's playing the game. You can get a game in one straight shot, that 27-hour narrative. Over here, you get, one season, and then there's almost 2 years to the next season. Like in this case, it was 2 years. But as it stands, most of it I thought was very well done. It was not a one-to-one, and I appreciated some of the choices that they made. I thought all the performances were once again great. I thought Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey did a great job once again. Isabella Merced as Dina, probably the scene stealer of the entire season. I loved her in this. She was fantastic. I really liked Gabriel Luna once again as Tommy. I really liked Jeffrey Wright as Isaac. Thought he did a very menacing job. Caitlin Dever as Abby was excellent, and I cannot wait to see her in season 3. We're gonna get to see a lot more of her over there, and that should be really exciting. Most of the direction of the season was also really, really good. The action sequences when they happened were incredibly intense and very well filmed. But overall, I felt the same way about this season as I did the last season, in that I think it's a very, very good season of TV. Not perfect, but a very good watch overall. Guys, thank you for joining me on this journey over the last several weeks. It means the world to me, and thank you so much for being a part of this channel. That is also something that means the world to me. I really enjoy making these, and I can't wait to share more with you guys very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And we're gonna change it up over here. May your survival be long, and may your death be swift.